Got a heat wave coming, over 95 to 100 degrees coming your way for a week or longer, a couple days. Ready? We are going to get you through it with the ultimate heat wave survival guide in 3 simple steps. I'm in Zone 9B, California, so I'm not unfamiliar with this crazy heat. We regularly get heat waves all summer long. It's not unusual to get temperatures over 100, 105, 110 for a couple days. It's happening more and more across the country as climate change is affecting cities all over the country. So these spikes in temperature extended over periods of time are not going to be unfamiliar to a lot of you. It's not a problem as long as we're ready for it, and I have a plan for you. The time can be very, very stressful, not just for you, but for your plants. So before you do anything, plan ahead. We have weather apps. If you don't have one on your phone, go ahead and download it. You can set it to give you alerts for when there's going to be a spike in temperature for a day or so or more. I always do that just so that I'm ready. So my name is Wendy. I've been planting and growing in this challenging climate for more than 15 years. I look forward to sharing these tips with you. If you want more tips about hot weather gardening and just gardening in general, seed starting, go ahead and subscribe. Would love to share that with you. We'll grow along through the season together. In extreme heat, your garden can cake and bake and dry out. However, if you mulch, then you'll have a nice, beautiful moisture underneath that mulch and can sustain your plants through any heat wave. I usually use 1 bale of hay or straw. That gets me through the entire season. However, I also use things like leaves. An inexpensive mulch idea. This is an area in my shade garden that often just drops leaves. So I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to add any fresh straw. I'm just going to collect the leaves that have been gathering through other areas of my garden. I collect them in a bucket and I crunch them up and use them right in this bed. Putting those crunched leaves over a bed, well, over time, just replenish that soil, add a little bit more nourishment over time to the soil. So 3 options for you for mulching over the season, over the hottest months. Use straw or hay, crunched up leaves, or compost. One more way to mulch. You can actually provide a living mulch for your plants. Here in this 25-gallon bag, for this tomato, I've provided marigold, I'd sorrel, hazel, also strawberry. So all of this is supporting this tomato. Benefits of mulching, of course, retaining moisture in the soil, preventing evaporation as you're watering, keeping that water in the soil where you want it to be. And it also reduces the amount of watering you'll have to do. Speaking of saving water, step number 2 is water wisely. Now, the best time to water is early morning and late in the evening. This is any time, but especially during a heat wave. Early in the morning, I mean before 7 a.m. You know how hot it's going to get. It's going to get very hot. If it's going to be well over 100, you know that watering before 7 a.m. is going to be your key. That used to be for us here in California, in Zone 9B, or actually all over California. We were in such a bad drought. We had to water before 7 a.m. or after 7 p.m. It was just the rule. We could only water on certain days of the week. I was so grateful we're out of that drought, but the concept remains, right? You can actually save a lot of water in your garden if you water in that way. So I would recommend it. In general, I don't water in the middle of the day ever, but I would recommend watering before 7 or after 7 through a heat wave. If you're watering in the middle of the day, not only are you evaporating water very rapidly, it's just going to just evaporate right into the sky. But it also shocks your roots of your plants. Plant in the middle of the day and it's super hot and drooping. Those roots are pretty stressed and hot. If you're adding water on top of that, you're shocking the roots even further. I like to check my soil before I water. I use basically a test with my finger 2 inches down into the soil just to ensure, is it time to water? 2-inch test is going to help you. If you feel down into the soil 2 inches in and you feel moisture, you're not going to water. I don't care how hot it's going to be that day. But if you feel dryness, then you want to water that day. Instead of doing a finger test, you can actually put a water meter down. They're really inexpensive. I got one free with, I think, a gardening kit I bought one time. And it's actually pretty useful. Just pop that right in the ground and just see what it says. If you're in the green or water, if you're in the yellow or red, go ahead and water at the appropriate time. Anything in a pot is likely going to need daily water. Last and certainly not least about watering. Water using a drip system or a soaker hose or anything that's going to soak from the bottom. And I recommend a really deep watering. I usually set the hose onto the soaker and let that go for like 10 or maybe 15 minutes to really train the roots to go deep down. Essentially, if you do a bunch of shallow waterings, the roots of your plants are going to get trained not to go down deep because the water that they're getting consistently is up toward the top. However, if you do a deep water, it really trains those roots to go down deep to get the water that it needs. Drama. There are some plants in your garden that are going to dramatically droop and wilt and look really sad in the middle of a heat wave, in the middle of the day. However, I can tell you that that is the way that plants just kind of deal with the heat. They kind of droop over to protect themselves and to hide themselves from the sun and to protect their own leaves. It's not anything bad or dangerous. I think a lot of people will see that dramatic drooping. This happens particularly with tomatoes and squash really bad. Yeah. When it's really, really hot, it'll be particularly dramatic and it'll look really sad. If you test your soil and can feel moisture in there, please don't water. You're just going to make the situation worse. If you wait through and see how it is after 7 p.m., I promise most of the time it's going to pop right back and be just fine. If it bounces back up, then you know that that was just a heat response that you saw in the middle of the day, and you can leave it and just water as normal. That dramatic drooping that you're seeing is really just the leaves responding and reducing the amount of intake that they're taking from the sun. I like to think of it as the same way if I'm out in the sun, I wear a hat. You can put on UV shirts, you can do all kinds of things to protect yourself from the sun. Well, the leaves don't have any other way to cover themselves. So that is how they will respond. They just droop. The way you can treat drooping, check in the morning. If it's still drooping, then you should respond and provide water. If it's drooping in the evening, also respond and provide water. If it's drooping in the middle of the day, wait and see. Rule number 3, provide cover for sensitive plants. I consider a sensitive plant a seedling, anything that's been in the ground for less than a month or two. Any seeds that you actually just planted and are waiting to germinate. Any greens, lettuces, anything that's sensitive and can bolt. I will just take a UV cover and cover right up. You don't have to have anything fancy though. One thing you can do is just take a regular old bed sheet, cover any beds that are especially sensitive in the hottest parts of the day. You can even use cardboard. If you use any shade cloth, mine's like a 40 or 50% shade cloth, you can use that. You can even use an umbrella that you use in your backyard. I've done that before too. Just take that umbrella, expand it, and put it right over my zucchini or whatever that I'm worried about. On to bolting, sensitive crops and bolting. Something I will often do with things like lettuce, greens, is just tuck them in a protective spot because I tend to grow those things in the summer months in pots. I will tuck them under tables and places like that just to keep them safe. But if they do start to bolt, sometimes they will, you can just let it bolt. That's not a big deal. Let the flowers dry on the stalk. That's extra pollinators for your garden. That's super. I think there's nothing at all wrong with bolting. And then once it's all dried, save the seed for next season. Special note, tomato, any summer squash, or peppers. Those can and are particularly susceptible to things like sun scald. So I would just be really super aware and cover those if needed in the middle of the day. To protect your tomato, be sure not to prune too aggressively. You can aggressively prune crops like tomatoes or zucchini, summer squash. However, if you know a heat wave's coming, I would not do that. They really need the protective canopy of the leaves to ensure that they are safe from sun scald. I never really used to prune my tomatoes at all, really, unless there was just something that was in a walkway, or because tomatoes can be aggressive growers, as we all know. I started taking some advice from a creator. It's not that person's fault, it's my own fault for not doing the research. But as soon as I started pruning down to one stalk, boy, was that a mistake, because when a heat wave came, all my tomatoes that I had ripening on the vine got sun scald. And it's because they didn't have enough protective cover. Tomatoes really know what they're doing when it comes to growth, and they will protect themselves. I was interacting with a kind viewer who commented on my sun scald tomato page, was that tomatoes really know what they're doing. They know how to protect themselves. Let them grow and do their thing. It's really just more tomatoes. It's kind of an aesthetic thing, really, to aggressively prune it down to one stem. I'm not going to speak for other folks in other regions, but I can say there is no reason whatsoever in my climate zone to aggressively prune a tomato. In fact, it can ruin your crop, so be careful. If you want to know how I'm using these simple steps in my garden, you can check out my previous videos. I have a short that I created specifically on pruning tomatoes in a hot climate and how to use watering systems, which is coming up soon. That's Probably in the next couple weeks I'll have that ready. I'll link it at the end of the video once it's ready. So if you garden in a hot area or if you found this useful, please give me a subscribe and a follow. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.